this was about as bizarre and as easy as it gets.
So the number for me was a number that would allow me to never have to work again.
I feel like we got top.
I went from a sale of $500,000 to in debt.
$192 million.
This is Built to Sell Radio with your host, John Warlow.
So what's your biggest question when it comes to selling your company? When I ask that question of other entrepreneurs, I hear things like, how do I avoid an earnout? When's the best time to sell? How do I create a bidding war? These questions, along with many others, inspired me to write the book, The Art of Selling Your Business. It's a field guide for punching above your weight when it comes to selling your business. I've taken all the best practices from the 300 plus interviews I've done for this show and distilled them down into an action plan for you. You can get it along with some gifts from my listeners when you go to builttosell.com/selling. I can hear my mom's voice. She would always say, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And that was just a very common refrain from my mom. And I grew up with that notion in my mind, which is why I had such a fun time interviewing Frank Cianciulli about the sale of Enunciate, his teleconferencing business. He got an offer which was an enormous amount of money, yet he was also growing an uber fast business, and he hesitated. But eventually something happened that caused him to realize that that offer was an incredible life-changing amount of money and that he didn't know what the future would hold. He chose to accept an acquisition offer. And as he describes in this episode, he has built an amazing life and an amazing story after that. So look, there's lots to choose from in listening to this episode. I love the discussion around Joel, his counterpart on the other side of the negotiation. He was the corporate development person at Premier Global. And we got into some of the tips and tricks that he used to try to lower Frank's defenses. I also loved the humility that Frank brought to this entire interview and the conversation he had with his parents around the sale of his company, which I thought was really thought-provoking. And the regrets that to this day he still feels as a result of selling his baby. Here to tell you his entire story is Frank Cianciulli. Frank Cianciulli, welcome to Built to Sell Radio.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, John.
Where on earth are you today? We chatted before we hit record, but I think you're going to make me jealous one more time. Tell me where you are right now.
I'm in my home office in Miami, Florida. I'm staring at downtown Miami, the intercoastal, and the ocean as well. It's a beautiful sunny day here.
All right, shut up. You're making me angry just thinking about it. Awesome. Well, listen, congratulations on the sale of Enunciate and everything you've done in your career. And I know it goes well beyond Enunciate, but today we've decided to talk about Enunciate, which I think is your first big success and big win. So let's talk about what did Enunciate do? What was the business model?
Enunciate was a teleconferencing company for the most part. So audio, video, and web conferencing, I guess what people would consider Zoom today. Didn't quite have that slick technology back then. It was a little more archaic, mainly over phone lines and kind of clunky internet or video. But basically think conference calls. Yeah.
Yeah. And simple business model. How did you sell? Like who did you sell to and what was the revenue model?
Yeah. So I had originally worked at Bell Conferencing and decided to start my own. But in that industry, you've got the telcos, and then you've got a couple of large players that just consolidated. They were publicly traded. So Premier Global was one. Another one is a company called Intercall. And they obviously had heard of our growth, and they wanted a footprint in Canada. They're based in Atlanta, in the U.S. And they started to court me. So it was a rather lengthy courting process.
Okay, sorry, you're getting into the sale of Enunciate. Is that right?
Yeah.
Before we go there, let me just understand how you guys made money at Enunciate. So when I think of conferencing, my head, because I'm Canadian, I think of the two big telcos here. Yeah. And I think that you got a conference call number. I remember the old days where you had like an 800 number and all that jazz.
That's right.
So you didn't like put telephone lines up and string wire everywhere across Canada, right? Like you were reselling their,
Yeah, you would call
if you will.
So you had the network provider, which would be Bell, Rogers, or Telus, really, or AT&T, I think back then as well, Allstream. So you'd buy the toll free from them, and then you would buy what we call audio bridges from manufacturers, and they look like basically just servers essentially. And you charge a per minute model. So still exists today, actually, although everyone's migrating to a Zoom or a cloud type platform. But you'd get a phone number, and you'd be charged a per minute rate. So if you had 6 people that were on for 60 minutes, you'd be charged 10 cents a minute times 360 minutes, a $36 call.
And so what are the costs associated with this business? Since you're reselling, you don't have the capital outlay that a big telco would have, I'm assuming. Like what were the costs?
Well, you still would if you bought your own platform. Back then, you'd make the higher margins if you had your own servers. Now, since that model, and since you had a couple of very large companies that scaled, they just had reseller models. So if I wanted to start my own conferencing company, instead of me going out there and buying all these bridges and dealing with the telcos, I would just deal with a larger conferencing company, and they would wholesale it for me or white label it for me.
Got it. That's
but back then at Unsay, we did have our own platform, so we made that capital investment. And then at that point, it's just people. You have to have operators and reservations to take the reservations. If there's ever an issue on a conference call and somebody hits *0, somebody's got to answer that phone.
Yeah, and you guys became one of the fastest growing companies in Canada, as I recall. It was like the Profit 100, the Profit 50. Like you were one of the fastest growing. How fast were you growing, like in terms of top line?
Year 1, 2.2, year 2, 4.5, year 3, 7.5, 11.5, and then 15.5
You got those numbers committed to memory.
I remember those. Well, it was one of the best ones. I mean, the profit was heavy too, so it's a very lucrative business. Well, so now,
let me unpack that. So you're saying 15% top line revenue growth?
Well, at least that, yeah. 2.2, 4.5, yeah.
Got it. So you're not, so you're growing, you're growing over obviously a period of time. How did you finance the growth? What was the capital structure?
Well, we did, when we first started, we did the whole friends and family thing, very conservative, and just started bootstrapping it, 2 guys in a 10 by 10 office, and just really started literally pounding the phone, selling. For the most part, people pay, and they pay quickly in that business. It's like a utility. It's not crazy expensive. Conference calls are important, so we get paid really quickly. And then we just started hiring other salespeople as we grew. So
you had a partner?
Yeah, we had a partner, and I bought him out later, but yeah, we had a partner.
What triggered the buyout?
Well, because we did the whole co-CEO thing, and because we started scaling fairly quickly, like we grew to over 100 employees relatively quick, from a thing that started with 2 guys in a 10 by 10 office, and you're adding offices and you're expanding offices. All that's happening very quickly. You're making a lot of money. So there's things that go wrong in a business, and when it hits financial hardships that partners fight. It also happens when things are going really well.
What did you guys fight over?
I wouldn't say that we fought necessarily in my case. I just felt that the ship needed one captain, if that made any sense. And because of the demographics of the business, we're in Liberty Village in a loft, and a lot of young testosterone in that office. I was younger. My partner was 16 years my senior, and it just wasn't working out. So it was either, okay, have difficult conversations about, okay, you got to do this and I do this, and I just want to run it now. I've been building it, I want to run it. And it worked out. He took his money and started his own company in Australia, moved to Australia. It was something, he surfed with the sun every day. It turned out to be a great story all around.
Sounds great. How did you value the company for the purposes of breaking up with the partner?
Well, it was, he wanted to be purchased, so it was more of just what we felt we could afford, at the time.
Do you mean what you thought the company could afford?
Well, yeah. I mean, I just, if you wanted a big number that I couldn't afford to do, what was I supposed to do? Yeah. So the negotiation was very much what I felt the company or my comfort level of taking the cash out to them, as opposed to not stifling the company's growth.
Did you have a sense as you grew, like what it might be worth? Like when did you were you thinking it might be a multiple of revenue or a multiple of EBITDA? Like, did you start to think about those kinds of things at all?
I did. I remember even telling him, he was like, listen, I don't want you to work in the company, but you're still a shareholder. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, especially owner operators, it becomes ego. You wear 3 hats in a business. You're an employee, you're a shareholder, and then you're a board member. Those are distinct. They're different. So I remember telling him, I don't think you should sell. We're going on a great path. We're going to have tons of dividends. You're going to get dividends, lots of them. I didn't, what's the big deal, the salary, in the role. But I think it was just I think he was hurt. And he just figured out, I want out. If I'm not going to be part of this, then I want out. All the negotiations was me saying, just don't sell, don't sell it. And then it turned out we ended up obviously selling the company for a much bigger multiple a couple of years afterwards. But he didn't seem to be upset about that.
Yeah. It's funny. It's something that comes up a lot in conversations with other guests where there's a big gap in age where I can think of one example where the older entrepreneur kind of just was at a different stage, right? Like they didn't want to take a lot of risk. They wanted to slow down. They wanted to kind of diversify their wealth and feel kind of secure. Mm-hmm. And the younger one is like, let's go, take on the world. Was there a dynamic like that going on?
For sure.
Yeah. How big a company were you at that time in terms of top line revenue?
When I did the buyout, so it would have been 2004. Yeah, so that year we did 7.5 million in revenue and I don't know what it was, but 3.5 in profit.
Got it. So you took some of that profit and paid him out
basically
over time, I'm assuming?
Over some time too, yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't have to take on any debt to do that?
No, we did it through cash flow. And then when the company sold a couple of years later, I still owed him money. So he got paid that out all at once. So I think that's why he was also happy.
He was happy to see it.
Because then right away, I know he was planning it, but then right away after that check, he was off to Australia and he started a company very successfully. They've done great, it's a good story all around.
And so
the relationship soured, which was a shame because we're good friends, building the business. It was nothing personal. I felt I needed to run the company. I was anyway, and it was just getting a bit awkward. You had a bit, employees tend to, if they don't like the answer from one partner, they go to the other one. There's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, they choose sides, right? And they're either Frank's guys or they're, what?
Yeah.
Interesting. So as you grow, you start to really accelerate. Any outside investors? Did you look at bringing in outside investors? Did you have outside investors first?
So what happened was when we did a friends and family round, we had a gentleman who became the partner was Tony Lacavera. He had a company called Global Live.
We've had him on the show actually.
Oh, there you go. So I met. Yeah. So okay. So if you want to know the history of Tony. He was, grinding it out. He was 3 years into Global Live at that time. I don't think they were even making money. They were probably still burning. He's 26. I'm 27. I pitched him on this idea because I saw he already had infrastructure, he had operators and stuff like that. So I thought, okay, we could double down. And it was valuable having Tony as a mentor, just because he had walked through the minefield first. I think that's also what helped, just get. I mean, we worked really hard and sold a lot. That's why we grew. But ultimately, having that kind of guy that had the governance, and had made the mistakes beforehand, that helped. And ultimately what happened was between, I guess at that point, Global Life is the actual company. We did the buyout. So it became just him and I at the end.
Got it. So he kicked in some money at that stage, a similar stage where
early, then he bought out all the shareholders and we bought out Jeff. We had another minority partner too that wanted that we bought out as well. Basically it was our first sales director.
How did you value the company for the purpose of selling to a portion of it to Tony Lacavera? What was that? Did you guys have a valuation?
Yeah, a multiple of EBITDA, but it's so tricky when a company's growing. I got hockey stick growth, right? Because, but at the same time, you got to deal with what you got and what you've accomplished and what the company can afford. And it's a minority stake, so there's always a discount there. You don't have any power. Somebody buys in a minority stake. They can't influence the business.
So that's interesting. So
for that.
So you would pay less for shares in a company where you were the minority shareholder.
Yeah. Oh, that's my rule of thumb always.
Interesting.
I've never heard that. You have a shareholder agreement, all that stuff. At the end of the day, if you're not active in the business, you're not going to know what's really going on.
Yeah, and so as an investor, you're not gonna pay such a premium as if you had control. That's, you know what? I've done this show for 300 episodes. I've never heard that notion before. It's really interesting. Yeah, either I'm dumb or slow learner, or you're pretty smart. If folks want to listen for the episode with Anthony Lacavera, it's probably just type in. We'll link to it in the show notes at Built to Sell, but it was maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. And we talked a little bit about Win Mobile, which was a company he built and exited, I think, $1 billion valuation at the end of the day. It was a huge, massive exit. Yeah. $1 billion. Yeah. So great story if you're into that stuff. Good. Okay. So we got Anthony Lacavera on board it sounds like I don't want to say silent partner because I'm sure he was involved, but he wasn't an operating partner. Is that right?
No, he wasn't operating. He was operating Global Live, but we spoke every day and we meet once a week formally. That like management reviews. So he was still, that was his first venture outside of what he did.
You refer to him as a mentor. Is it was it weird to have a mentor relationship with a guy the same age?
Yeah. So I mean. Yeah, maybe mentor is the wrong word, but no, I mean, it really was, it really was from a perspective of business and building from that context. Not, so when I think mentor, I think life and business, almost like a life coach as well, especially when you think of maybe someone who's your senior, who, is at a different stage in life and teach you about balance. This was strictly business. This is about, entrepreneurialism 101, building a business 101. He had made a bunch of mistakes, whether it was dealing with receivables and all that kind of stuff, right? So we got ahead of a lot of things to ensure we didn't get stung with bad debt and any kind of employee issues and HR matters that a lot of companies might learn as they go and make a bunch of mistakes. We were just able to put a lot of policies, procedures, and processes in place to avoid a lot of those you're still always going to have challenges, but we were able to mitigate a lot of them.
Got it.
Because he was always there to someone to talk to. And if even not always only him, but even I had access to his full management team because, Global Life was the partner itself as a company. So, I could call the CFO and their IT people often.
Oh, I see. So Anthony personally didn't invest in the company. It was Global Life, his business.
Well, he did it first, then the company actually became kind of me and Global Life as a company.
Got it. So at this time, you're roughly 7.5 top line, 7.5, 8 million top line at this stage.
And then we doubled 2 years after that. We went from 7.5 to 15.5. So we went from 7.5, 11.5, 15.5. And after the buyout. So we had great momentum.
Oh, you know what? I wrote down 4.5, 7.5, 15.5, and I thought you were referring to your percentage of growth. And I'm like, that's actually slower than I thought.
That's top. That's $1 million in revenue.
Yeah. Forgive me. I wrote that down wrong. I wrote percentage, and I'm like, I'm surprised I wasn't growing faster, just given how big you got, how fast you got. Got it. I'm with you now. So you double in 2 years. You're at 15.5. What triggered you to want to sell?
I didn't. So these guys were good. So Premier Global, publicly traded, started doing a bunch of acquisitions. They were public market. So they would look at what their stock price is and say, okay, they're trading at, whatever it was, 10, 15 times profit. Hey, if we can buy companies at 5 or 6, we get an immediate lift. So they came courting. And I'm not interested. I was growing so quickly. I was having the time of my life. For me, operating a business was a dream come true. It was better than a lottery because the money was good, but it was more so I found my purpose. I found something I'm good at in life. The energy was I woke up every morning excited. But you have your bad days. But they came a couple of times, and the one time he made sure he brought me in. I said, "Okay, I'm really going to take you to an expensive restaurant." I started making these guys really pay.
Where'd you take them?
We're at Canoe,
Canoe. So Canoe for folks
overlooking Lake Ontario, and he says,
"Yeah."
And this is what got me. I didn't really ever really ask, price or anything. And he goes, so, and I'm not interested in selling. I love business. He goes, yeah, okay. He goes, but you could do many other, and I already had started other businesses. And I think that's the main reason I sold, by the way, because I already had started other companies, and they were growing very quickly as well. But he said, I don't understand. Why would you not want to put 30 million bucks in your bank? And I says, pardon? 30? That was like, I remember right on my way back calling Tony going, Tony, so they're talking like 30. And he's like, whoa, we got to look at that then. And I think the official LOI at that time was 33. And then we had kind of lost an account. And then through the negotiations, it got down to 30. But that number was kind of like, and I learned a lot about how to buy companies from that, from what kind of realizing what worked on me. People, even if they're not interested in selling, once you actually put it in writing and they maybe talk to their partners or spouses or, then, and psychologically it starts to get interesting. You start spending the money in your head. And now when you have a bad day at work, you think, hey, I got an offer, maybe I should sell. So it's a real psychological warfare, I think, when you're negotiating with a business, because a home is different. You have to actually, usually, list your home. You've decided you want to sell a home. But imagine if fairly often people knocked on your door. You don't want to sell your house. You love your house. Yeah, but once he throws out a number, then what? A business is like that because people contact you, even if you're not officially for sale.
I love this. I love this story. I want to spend some time here. So for folks who don't know, Canoe is a very fancy restaurant at the top of one of the bank towers in downtown Toronto. It looks out over Lake Ontario, and like hamburgers are $56 or something like that. Like it's a very fancy place. So I'm glad you took him there, which is great. Or he took you there.
Yeah.
And so you're at Canoe, and tell me a little bit about the conversation. Like was the auspices of the meeting set up under the auspices that they wanted to acquire you? Were you aware going into that lunch that was the nature of the conversation was going to be about?
Yeah,
acquisition?
I mean, this guy, I'll never forget, his name was Joel Hugh, and he was just very good at his job. So his sole job was out there, finding companies to buy and going through the whole courting. And it's a courting process. I mean, it really is. When they flew me down even to visit them, I get to my hotel room and there's a big, fancy gift basket with, $200 scotch in it, the whole bit. I mean, so he was coming to town anyway and just wanted, let's just get caught up. And they just,
he didn't like make it a big deal. He's like, hey, we're just I'm going to be in Toronto was the line.
Several different tactics. It seemed as if they had a feeling for the size and how quickly we were growing. And they saw us on the we were winning a bunch of awards. So, and that's why I do encourage entrepreneurs to always, go for those awards. What are the best places to work or best managed or fastest growing, all that.
I think 5,000 is a big one. Yeah.
Because if you want to see, if you want to raise your profile or just, someone to read about you. So they kind of got a sense for our growth. So they wanted something that was a good sales engine. And again, they wanted, because it wasn't much in Canada really besides the telcos.
So let's go back. So Joel's like, hey, I'm coming to Toronto. Maybe we can have lunch. And you're like, okay. So you sit down with Joel, then what? How does the conversation go?
I mean, he's asking me about business and how you guys doing a great job. I says, yeah, we're killing it. We're growing. I mean, 2 years ago I was at 7.5 making whatever it was. And then, so every month that goes by, you're growing. Every time you see, I mean, I'll never forget and sometimes it's the opposite in business when you're struggling, but every month, the financial review was so much fun because it was just the company was always growing. There was always more profit.
What are you putting on the bottom line?
When you're in that space and you have a real business, and you could just take those profits out and you're still investing, you're still growing regardless of even taking money out. Well, at that time we did shareholder buyout, but you're not. At least me, I wasn't thinking about selling. I mean, things were going great.
Just to be clear, you're 15 on the top line. What would you have been putting to the bottom line at that time? Ballpark.
So we did on 15. It was actually like the last fiscal year. Then it was like 5.5 of EBITDA on 15 revenue.
And so, how thirsty is the company? Like, 5.5? You and Anthony owning the business. Are you able to suck any of that cash out and put it in your pocket, or are you having to reinvest it all in the growth?
No. That's profit, right? So we're growing at a big clip. Looking back, maybe we could have thrown more money at it and grown even more. Like when I look back at that, but then we also had the shareholder buyouts, right? So we had cash, we had checks going out every month to the shareholder.
You're paying the guy in Australia, and yeah. So, I love this. So you're having this conversation with Joel, and how does he kind of pivot the conversation to the discussion around acquisition? Like, do you remember what his line was or how he sort of raised the specter of an acquisition?
Well, he was. I knew I could see the press releases. I knew they were buying. I knew they were buying. They were, a bit of a warpath as far as sales. So and you're getting to know him. He's getting to know me. We're both wine guys. We're having all those conversations. And then when I think he had asked me, okay, so what is it looking like this year as far as your numbers? And I think when I told him, or we had just did 4.5 in profit, I think that prior year, and he says, well, why would you, why would you not want to put $30 million in your pants? I said, $30 million. I guess I didn't really think of multiples. But I think even if I knew 5 or 6 times, I don't know, as an entrepreneur, I was just so focused on growing the business, I didn't actually think. And that number just sounded big. I was
It sounds massive.
3.5 years ago, I was at Bell Canada, as a sales rep.
That's awesome. And so
I'm living in a small condo in Square One, and now someone's talking about $30 million. Whoa. I mean, it wasn't all mine, half, but still.
Yeah, but so he says, why wouldn't you want to put $30 million? That was his shot over the bow to say that's kind of what we would be willing to pay for.
Exactly.
And
so once I realized it was that kind of, then we're like, okay, let's talk.
And so did you basically take the calculation back in your mind and go, okay, 30 million, we're doing roughly 5. Yeah. Did you do the 6 times EBITDA number in your mind? It's at lunch, you're doing that in your mind. Yeah.
And then obviously after, when we started chatting with Tony, it was a matter of, okay, so we're going to keep making all this cash. Like, do we need to sell? It became a question of, okay, and I think this is like what every entrepreneur thinks. Okay, well, I can just keep going. Why would I sell? Especially when you're growing. So this is why I know it's maybe not relevant in this conversation, but I do regret selling. I don't think it made sense to sell at that time. I think I could have went at least 3 to 5 years longer. Just because of the trajectory, but you don't know that. You don't know that even if you have been growing hockey stick growth, you don't know that it's going to continue to grow. And then I remember having some bad days, like post that kind of canoe meeting, because from that canoe meeting to sell was at least a year, maybe a year and a half. There's something like that. It took a while. Well, I'd say at least a year. It was probably 15 months. So you have your bad days, and when you have those bad days, you're like, oh, maybe I should sell. Then you have a great day or a great month or a big win, and then you're like, forget it. I want to keep going. It's really psychological. I mean, it's then people are talking bird in hand. You start telling friends or maybe some close friends, and their reaction is always like, oh, you got to sell. I think the only person that said, oh no, just keep it, was my dad. Oddly enough. Just you have a good business. Why do you need to sell it? And I continue on that. I don't think it makes sense to sell a good business that's generating good cash flow. The Warren Buffett, right? The buy and hold. He sells businesses when he no longer feels you can apply the capital somewhere else and get a better lift. But if it's your passion and it's your baby and you're good at it, there's a lot of factors that come in with businesses.
What was the conversation like with your dad? Tell me more about that. So, was he an informal mentor of yours that you went to for counsel? And tell me about that conversation.
Yeah, he wasn't sophisticated as far as understanding valuations or things like that. But I did give him the roughly how much we're making, and what these guys want.
What did that feel like to tell your dad that someone was willing to write you a check for $30 million?
It was definitely sweet. That, and when I started winning the awards, because that whole Bell Canada thing, I did that. That was a summer job while I was wrapping up my last year of university. I was supposed to be a lawyer. My dad has been brainwashing me since I was like 12 to be a lawyer, and I had the blinkers on. I was going to be a lawyer. And then when I go work for this conferencing company, and it was lucrative, and I was doing well at it, so it felt good that I was good at something. So then I remember telling him, "Listen, Dad, don't worry about the law school thing. I'm going to put that off, but I think I'm going to start my own conferencing company." So then I finally did. And then when I'm, in a relatively short period, you're talking about 3.5 years after starting a company, so someone's talking $30 million. That was that was a good moment from that perspective. I thought he'd do a different reaction. I thought he'd be like, oh, that's it. Great. Sell it. Let's go. This is good. Let's retire. He's like, nah, keep it. You have a good business. Keep going. I'm like, oh God.
What did your dad do for a living? What was his profession?
So he was like he was actually a mechanic by trade when he was younger, but he in the I guess around 1980 got his real estate license and did relatively well. Ended up having his own brokerage, and ended up buying a lot of land, and then brought my mom into it, and she ended up buying a lot of properties. So they were entrepreneurs. I was an only child, but he was, maybe because of that blue collar background, he's lawyer, he was thinking lawyer. So once I think one of the most proudest day of both of their lives when I won the Entrepreneur of the Year. I mean, that was a fabulous evening and an experience. I mean, it felt like even more than when I got married and had my first kid, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't know.
Don't tell your wife that.
No, I know, but something tells me they're really, really, I mean, everybody has a kid. Not everybody's Entrepreneur of the Year, if you want to put it in that perspective, right? Like, I mean, most people are married. So this was a big thing for them. I think being, coming from humble backgrounds and an only child, and they tried to do everything right. Like, they didn't put me in private school, and when they had the ability, my dad bought me a brand new Volkswagen Jetta. That's instead of going away to university, they didn't want me to go away. I was the only child. So I think they were just so proud or justified that hey, you know what, we did good with this guy. We raised them well.
It's a great story, and it must make them incredibly proud. And I wonder, was there any, dads and sons have complicated relationships. I mean, books have been written on it. It goes well beyond my pay grade to even think about that. But there is a sense of, at least in some relationships, a subtle sense of competitiveness, right? Where you want to, I'll think of my own relationship with my dad. Like, there's a little bit of like, I want to do him proud, right? I want him to feel proud of me. You know what I mean? And at the same time, yeah, keep going.
No, I wonder that too. I get the sense that, I mean, my dad, it was interesting, my dad and my mom, because between both of them, my mom was always working hard and hustling. I want to get bigger and bigger and bigger and competitive. So I got that. My dad, also successful, a little more conservative. She was more of a risk taker. He was way more conservative, and he always stressed lifestyle too. Like, don't kill yourself working, and even to this day, I like the way I structured after I sold. Let's say it was the only company I ever operated. Now, I mean, we have, I don't know how many operating companies. I've got presidents and management teams that run it. I'm here in Miami, I'm able to be away. So because I think my dad's influence, as far as just making sure you smell the roses along the way. Otherwise, what are we doing all this for? And, and there was a badge of honor when I was first building businesses, and I'd look at, guys that would work hard until their 90s or 100 and working 7 days a week. And it's like, yeah, I like that. I like the concept of, loving what you do and always working, which I think I always will do. But at the same time, these guys, like, that on their deathbeds, they're all having the same regrets. Didn't spend enough time with family. Didn't enjoy all the riches. I mean, what's the point of doing it if it's just ego? I mean, I used my ego to grow it, but now when I'm at a different stage. I want to get wealthier, but I don't want to kill myself doing it. So if I can't generate enough momentum or work with light operators, I wouldn't do it. So I think that's where I got that from my dad. But yeah, I think one of the regrets, or maybe because of the stage in life, but maybe to do something with him entrepreneurially, like back him on a venture. But I think he was at that point done. My mom, I think, would have, unfortunately, I sold Enunciate in the fall of 2006, and she died exactly 2 years later, tragically.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, cancer, relatively young, 57. But I probably would have done some type of ventures, probably real estate related, with my mom.
Neat that she was able to see the success you had before she passed. That's pretty special.
I'm really happy about that, to be honest, because I think that I could just that those because you go on the award circuits, right? It was a period of a year or two where the universities give me an award, and the Italian chamber is giving me an award, and the top 40 under 40. So every few months there's a big gala and
black tie and
yeah. So it was a really wonderful experience. I'm definitely glad that. So I'm a big fan of those. Even though that at the end of the day the reward is the money and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, I don't know, something about validation is fun, and not only for the owner or the entrepreneur, but the whole company.
Yeah, sure. It
basically a team effort.
Makes people feel great about the place they work. I want to go back to the deal for a second. So you're at lunch at Canoe. Joel says, why wouldn't you want to put $30 million in your jeans? Were you able to keep a straight face when he said that?
Yeah, I did. I did, it was only the money, we're still growing, that kind of stuff. But secretly, I'm like, that just sounded so big to me. I'm not sure why. I mean,
Well, I know why. It's a huge
lotto-ish, very lotto 649 feeling. It was I had such the blinkers on. Like I was so focused on building the business. Ironically, though, when we used to talk about starting our own company, because from the moment we decided we wanted to start the company, from actually starting it, was 5 years. I'm a history poli-sci major. I know nothing about writing business plans, raising capital, none of that stuff. So it wasn't until I met Tony Lacavera, and he knew all that, that it all came together quickly. But we were ready to go. So once we met Tony, we put it all together really quickly, and we knew we were gonna execute. So I was just so focused on just growing the company that I but I didn't remember that back when we were planning, we said, oh, we'll grow it for 5 years, sell it, and retire, or do something else. But it was ironic that it was exactly 5 years. We started August of 2001, and the sale was September of 2006. 61 months.
Let's get into incredible growth. So let's get into what happens next. So you leave Canoe. Who do you call first?
Tony, on the way back to the office.
And what's his reaction?
So he's like, oh, okay. So I think he realized, okay, this is real. But then we started. Then Tony's more analytical, he doesn't have an emotional connection to the business, but so he looks at more just dollars and cents. But he does understand that I do have an emotional connection to the business. So I remember him saying to me, and then when I got to the office, I was even waiting in the parking lot, right? And when they called him, I'm going to the office, and I remember exactly where I was in the parking lot of my building, Liberty Village, where he said, like building a business is fun. And he goes, and we're past it. We're making money. He goes, so yeah. He goes, some guys like managing their money after they sell, but they're older. We're young. He goes, so you got to think about that. He's like this is, you're enjoying this. This is fun. And so that's what stuck with me. That was hard. Then things changed, and Tony, they were looking at buying Yak Communication, and I know that they needed the money from the sale to be able to complete that. I mean, Tony's would have figured something out anyway, but they needed that money.
Sorry, forgive me. So Tony, just want to make sure I understand. So Tony was looking at Global Live, was looking to make an acquisition.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yak Communication was on
okay.
The block. Global Live was far smaller and weren't capitalized enough to buy that business.
Okay.
If they were to do it, they'd have to bring on partners in equity. So
he wants to
the big payday from the Enunciate sale that helped them close. Even then was a miracle they pulled it off, even with all that capital.
Okay, so for folks listening, they may not have heard of Yak or whatever. So that makes sense. So part of it sounds like your partner, this Anthony Lacavera, said, hey, you got to think about this. Like, you don't want to just sit on the beach. There's a lot of excitement. And then you became aware that he would have liked to use some of the proceeds from the sale of Enunciate in order to buy Yak.
And that's why, but just to clarify, that's why, that's why I respected Tony so much, because, he kept them separate. I remember saying that, okay, well, you want to buy this, so we should sell Enunciate. He's like, no. He's like, let's treat everything separately. This is Enunciate, and let's decide whether this is something. He goes, ultimately, it's your call. Like, but I'll support you whatever you want to do. But he was more, okay, this is how much profit we're making, so let's think about this. If we go 3 more years at this level, and so we'll take whatever it is, 10, 12 out of the business. Then what's the business worth? Is it going to be decline? So he brought a very analytical approach to it from as far as the numbers, and he kept them separate. He says, I like to keep every deal separate. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he said to me.
Right. So the kind of conversation you guys are having in your mind is we're able to pull out a chunk of change every year because we're so profitable. We don't have to invest in CapEx. Yeah. So we just keep growing this thing So one option was to continue to grow, continue to pull profits out, and it may be worth even more than 35 years down the road. That was one.
Plus, you have the cash. Yeah, I think that's what made us unique. I mean, I think a lot of companies, even if they have rocket growth and then they get a big multiple, like they haven't been taking cash out. So, you have fatigue. Let's say you're the owner operator, even though your business is worth $30 million, but what if you haven't taken any money out and
You're still driving the Jetta?
You're still driving the Jetta. Exactly. So I think that was what was different. And I think that's why, looking back, we shouldn't have sold, but I thought, okay, I'd have all this money to do all this stuff. And obviously I bought a place in Florida and build a big house, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
But I would be able to do that anyway through the cash flow. But you don't know that for sure when you're in it either, right?
I think people listening
if anyone is a purchaser or wants to buy businesses, just make the offer. No one's going to tell you they want to sell. Just put it in writing and you'll see what happens.
That's a good pro tip.
People start spending the money once it's on paper.
Once it's on paper.
Same thing happened with Joel. He submitted an LOI. Once it became on, I printed it, I kept it, I showed people, my family, friends, right? Before that was just talk, but once it was in writing in a formal LOI, things changed. Then it got in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. So he left lunch. How long after lunch at Canoe did Joel present you with the letter of intent?
It came relatively quickly. Not days, but at least not much longer than 2 or 3 weeks. And then he flies me down to visit Atlanta. Then the whole team comes out and steaks and expensive wine. These guys were crazy wine guys. We spent thousands of dollars on wine at dinner. So now they're pitching, being part of their family as well, right? Part of the deal is they needed to be there for at least, it was 16 months. We sold in September. They wanted to make sure I stayed at least until the end of the following year.
What was your reaction to the wining and dining?
I thought this could be a nice transition. I knew, because I had other ventures, that I knew I wouldn't work for these guys. I'm not going to work for someone else. The money was too big. I think if guys sell their businesses and it's not, money where they can retire off, and then whoever, you might want to look at working with the company that buys you, but no, not my case. I had other ventures making great money and obviously a bunch of money in the bank. So I didn't need to work there. But I thought, this is a cool transition. These guys are going to do all kinds of fun stuff. They're talking about these, management retreats and Pebble Beach and all these places. I'm like, this is great. I remember, after I sold the business and I worked there for the year and a half, and, they're in Atlanta. So they had their own private booth and the coach and went to the Masters. So they brought me to the Masters. I had quite a few cool experiences working with these guys for the year I was there.
So you're getting wined and dined in Atlanta. You're going to the Masters. It's a pretty special time. I've heard from some entrepreneurs that they get their sort of defenses lowered by the booze at the special dinners and so forth. And towards the end of dinner, some of the conversation turns to deal points, and they end up thinking about the dinner after the fact and thinking, oh man, I shouldn't have said X, or I shouldn't have done Y. Did anything like that come up for you? Yes,
it did. All of the above. Because, and this is when I realized that at least when it's done well, because that takes energy, and a lot of companies don't do that, go through a broker, and it's just all, maybe they'll get on a call and then, offers will start flying. That's not the best way to do it. If you want to be successful making acquisitions, you have to build the relationships with the potential vendor, with the owner of the company, essentially. And because, normal sales, people do business with people they like. So people don't want to sell a company to someone they don't like. And you don't want that to happen, even if it's a good deal, because they're going to leave it in rough shape, or they're not going to, you don't know what you're buying after the fact, because you want a good relationship even after, even if the person's not, especially if the person's not going to be active in the business. So the wine starts flowing and you start, you're talking about life, and so they're learning about you. They're learning your little trigger points, and that's important, and same thing I do. We're talking to people about selling business. What they want to do with the money, with their families. What's their hobbies? They're going to go buy a boat? What are they going to do with it? That kind of thing.
Got it. And so as in retrospect, what might you have done differently with that dinner?
I knew they wanted the company badly. So if it was a matter of maybe trying to make a few extra bucks on the deal, I think just hold my cards a little tighter, because then, you start talking about, because it became a lot of talk about what life would be like for me post-sale. That I'd still be in Canada doing my own thing. It'll still be an Enunciate with all the same employees, but wow, you're going to be part of in your case, in my case, I was going to be reporting directly to the CEO and with that C-suite, where other acquisitions weren't, just because they wanted to treat Canada like a different region. There was one other entrepreneur, they bought his business in Australia that would be on that team, but everyone else, no, right? But I'd have this special treatment, and we would do these fun things. So they gave me a taste of it, when we're out there and having nice dinners, and because you're hearing them tell stories. Oh, and they're in Pebble Beach and they did this. Oh, and they're at this conference or at that conference. They'd go to great places. Really
in retrospect, now, given how sophisticated you are about this stuff, is it clear to you that they were dropping Pebble Beach and mentioning,
yes.
with intent, all by design?
Yeah, and I'm a pretty street smart guy, so I can usually pick it off. That's why I say this guy was good at what he did. He was just a nice guy, regardless, just a good quality, human being. So, he was just good at his job.
Yeah. Where does it go from there? I mean, did you try to get competing offers, or what was the next step?
We did. And I think that's what helps. I think it was TELUS, actually. And they just gave us a real lowball, and comparably anyway. And at that point, we just focused on Premier.
Did you use the TELUS offer in an effort to kind of get Premier up a bit?
No, the negotiations was really just about comparing, because they would show us all of the acquisitions, like for the previous 5 years that were completed, not only by them, but just in the industry. And they had the whole formula which showed the multiples. And so they were showing that their offer was already on the high end or the highest end of that bracket. So it really made it tricky, but we still pushed it. We can still run it, the cash plus our trajectory. We don't know what the trajectory of those companies were. If you buy a company at the same multiple of mine, but they've been flat versus I'm growing at 50% a year, you can't, that's irrelevant then, so these are the kind of arguments and negotiating we were doing.
What was their original letter of intent at? Was it right on the 30 million?
It was like 33, the first LOI, and then it came down. This is another reason why we sold. We had some technical issues, and we had a few accounts leave. We got over them, and then it's like, okay, what do we do? Do we wait and not sell and wait to just get back up? Because they had to adjust it down. One of the accounts was significant. I don't know,
how much revenue do you remember?
$500,000 a year in profit. This one account.
Wow.
The company ended up going bankrupt. It was one of those like it was AmeriQuest Mortgage. Remember the whole? Because 2 years later with the whole.
Yeah.
So that worked out.
So the 2008. I mean, they imploded, right? Yeah. So you lost a big account, and they said, "Hey, we need to look at this LOI again."
Yeah, we tried negotiating it, saying, "No, we still want to sell at that price." And I was like, "Well, we can't do that," And so that was the only kind of bitter part of it from that perspective, from a negotiating perspective, and that was it. I mean, that was too big of a hit for them to just say, "Okay, we're still going to pay the same number."
Mm-hmm.
So then it became a negotiating what's fair, but it was pretty much whatever the multiple was minus the EBITDA from that account.
It sounds like
it wasn't so much I lost the money. We lost $3 million in valuation, but I think it helps. I don't know. I was still on the fence, ironically, but I think because that occurred made me realize nothing's for sure. This is the whole bird in hand thing really, that really kicked in. It's like, okay, what if I did lose 3 or 4 accounts? What if those technical issues dragged on another month or two? A lot of our clients were obviously patient. We worked through them, but I mean, at some point they're going to, when your business evaporates, what do you do?
Yeah. So this losing this account, these technical issues made you realize that
that scared
nothing's for sure. Yeah.
I got to tell you, there still might have been a good chance I don't sell. I mean, psychologically, I remember saying I'm not selling. And those issues put me over. And again, that's why I tell everybody, and I even think to myself, put an offer out there. It's like when you're a salesperson, you're trying to sell someone a service and say, oh, they're happy with their existing vendor. Doesn't matter. Still call them, still send a proposal, because guess what? If their vendor screws up, what you want is them to pick up the phone and say, hey, that guy was great that called me a couple of months ago about that service. I'm going to call him now. Mm-hmm. Same thing when you're trying to buy a business. Make the offer, go through the process, because that entrepreneur, that business has a bad day. Oh, now things have changed. Now they have an exit. They have an alternative where they weren't thinking that otherwise. Some people do. Some people have something bad and then put their business for sale. You can sniff that out if you're a buyer.
Yeah. But in your case, you realize that nothing's for sure, and that you've got a bird in hand, and you're gonna take it. What changed for you? What was life like after the check hit your bank account?
Not a good period. So the year.
Did you say not a good period?
No, not for me personally. No, that year of transition, working for someone else, seeing the stupid decisions they were making. Fine, we go to the Masters and have some, but besides that, I felt that I was also just getting involved in the other companies where I wasn't, because I was focused on Enunciate. So the other companies, and I think I kind of even messed up, kind of disrupted them a little bit. I had a hard time dealing emotionally with the sale. I wept. I remember the first at the Christmas party. So I sold in September. The December Christmas party, downtown, got a hotel room, stay there. And I remember with my wife just crying my eyes out. What have I done? I sold my baby, because you're at a Christmas party, there's hundreds of people there. You're just an emotional high when I was always with my employees, where kickoff meetings or chairman's clubs, those were emotional times. This is like my family, closer to my family in a lot of ways. I love spending time with the people that are in my business more than anyone else, because we have a common goal, something to talk about of interest to me. Because I can still talk about the small stuff that I talk with friends. I can still talk to sports with my employees, but we can talk about something that matters, in my opinion. So I was really, I didn't buy anything. That's one piece of, I would tell anyone that if it's enough, like, you got to treat yourself to something after you sell your business, not be frivolous necessarily, but I didn't do that, badge of honor. Let's just keep going. Let's keep building these businesses for the future. But I should have treated myself to something. I remember, always was my dream to, get a membership at St. George. And I went, and I was like, okay, let me go. And then I was a waiting list. Forget it. I don't need to go join St. George. I didn't buy a fancy car.
St. George's is a golf club in Toronto that's quite prestigious.
Yeah. So I regret not doing that earlier. Some of those things early. I did them later, fortunately. But I think the reward is a special thing. Like, so, I joined St. George later, but I think, man, if I just would have joined right after I sold my company, just a nice story, would have been a nice feeling to do that, to reward myself with something. That's why I like getting gifts for people as opposed to just giving them money, right? Or a gift certificate. Actually, because that way they remember you when they open or use that gift, and there's a relationship there as opposed to just money. Yeah.
I've definitely heard from past guests this notion of, this very incredible high that, when the check clears, and then a big drop. So I've heard that from others, and I've heard that sort of coming out of it is really about finding a new kind of purpose, a new project, whether that's another business. What was it for you that got you out of that sort of low period?
Yeah, once obviously the company started to scale and I was officially out of Premier, and we start getting other offices and stuff. And but then what I found post when you have a company that's really succeeding, and then you've got to, even if you do other things, now the grind is not as exciting because you had the momentum. You weren't grinding anymore. I mean, it's always a grinding when things are going well, but I think that's when I got back to obviously this is thing, and we start generating the Wish Group and marketing it and all that kind of stuff. So my new identity now is not Frank and Enunciate. Now it's Frank Wish Group.
Got it. And so for folks who
I'm
want
happy
to get
overall, the peace of mind that came with it. But I also wonder, man, how big would it have gotten? How much would I be even wealthier and more happier today? I don't know. Or who knows? Or maybe the company would have started to decline, and that would have been awful. It's like you sell on a high, right? Like you leave, like if you're an artist or a musician, you left them wanting more, or you end a TV series when the audience still wants more. So that's kind of what I did. So maybe it's a good thing, right? All memories are good. It was all never a year of flattening out or going in decline. So that's pretty special too. That's worth something, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So tell people where they can reach you now. Is there a website or a LinkedIn? What's best for people to reach you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is just Frank Cianciulli, but the website is wishgroup.ca. and Instagram's at Frank Cianciulli as well. And
Great.
that's where they can see
And
all
what
the-
is
what Bootstrap?
what
did.
does Wish Group do? Just in 30 seconds, kind of what's the company do?
Yeah, so Wish Group is a collection. It's the holdco, and it's a collection of telecom, media, and HR businesses. So we're back in the teleconferencing business. So the Zoom, we compete with Zoom, and we are the largest B2B webinar virtual events company in the country, and we own some of the largest privately held HR staffing companies in the country, and digital marketing, and all types of other fun businesses there. So it's essentially turned into an entrepreneurial ecosystem, an entrepreneurial farm, not an incubator. We operate the businesses, but very much an environment where we invest in people and give equity to managers and management teams, that sort of thing.
A mini Berkshire Hathaway, it sounds like.
Exactly, or even like a Pattison Group, maybe is another one.
Yeah. Great. Well, we'll put the information about Wish in the show notes, and the spelling of your surname in the show notes, so people can connect with you on LinkedIn. Frank, it was great to meet you. Great to hear the story.
Well, thanks for having me. It was really exciting taking a trip down memory lane.
Hey, if you like today's episode, you're going to love my new book, The Art of Selling Your Business. The book was inspired by the cohort of my guests over the years who have been able to negotiate an exit far better than the benchmark in their industry, sometimes 2 or 3 times more than I would have expected. I was curious to understand the tactics and strategies of these entrepreneurs and what they do differently from average performers. The result is a playbook for punching above your weight when it comes to selling your business. To learn more, go to builttosell.com/selling. where we put together a collection of gifts for listeners who order the book. Just go to builttosell.com/selling.
Thanks for listening to Built to Sell Radio with John Warrillow. For complete show notes with links to additional resources, visit builttosell.com/blog. John is the founder of the Value Builder System. To find out how to improve the value of your business by 71%, visit valuebuildersystem.com. John is also the author of Built to Sell, Creating a Business That Can Thrive Without You, and The Automatic Customer, Creating a Subscription Business in Any Industry. Connect with John at facebook.com/built-to-sell or on Twitter at John Warrillow, WARRILLOW. Thanks for listening.